Welcome everyone. Today we're going to be talking about the impact that financial pressures can have on a relationship and how to plan for a recession. On the Divorce Well podcast today, we're very lucky to have with us Tanya Osborne from Craig Investment Partners. Tanya has joined our Expert Advisor Network. Welcome, Tanya.
Thanks so much, Bridget. It's great to be here. And thanks for having me on the podcast. I just do need to start with a disclaimer because we are potentially going to be talking about investments and finance. So here it is.
Wonderful. Now, today we're going to be covering a subject that's very topical for so many people at the current time. The impact that financial pressures can have on a relationship and how to plan for a recession. So first, I want to talk more about Tanya, who is an investment advisor with Craig's. She has been with Craig since 2016. She provides investment advice, portfolio management, and asset allocation advice to individuals, trusts, estates, and charitable organisations. She has a passion for investment markets, beginning her career in 1999 at the New Zealand Stock Exchange in a legal role, and then spent time in London working in a number of legal and compliance roles for various investment banks, and then became an investment advisor 10 years ago. So, Tanya, you've got some fantastic financial investment knowledge and experience, haven't you?
Oh, thank you. Yes, it's funny listening to it back like that and realising how long I've been working for, but yeah, it's been a pretty varied career. So yes, I'd just like to say thank you for that lovely introduction, and it's just fantastic to be here today to talk about this really important topic.
Brilliant. Well, we're really thrilled to have you on as our guest today. So can you tell me a bit about the OCR decision that was announced recently and the impact that it's going to have for our listeners?
Yes, sure. So the OCR, it's actually the official cash rate, which we saw back in November. Our central bank, the Reserve Bank, increased interest rates by 0.75% up to a record 4.25%. Now, they've actually been increasing rates for the last year, but very quickly, and probably in the time that we've seen it, it's moved up most quickly. So this does have an impact on mortgage rates. So a lot of people who would have bought houses in the last couple of years would perhaps have fixed in a rate at around 2.5%. Well, mortgage rates are now looking like around about 6%. So already that's going to have an impact on what your mortgage payments are going to be fortnightly or monthly.
So what does this mean for Kiwis?
So the reason that the Reserve Bank is doing this is really to try and combat the inflation that we've seen over the last couple of years since the COVID pandemic. Now, if you recall, there were the banks and governments were just, the central banks were printing a lot of money, governments were doing wage subsidies. And so really what we're seeing is the other side of that. So we've got inflation at record highs. It's about 7.2% in New Zealand. And the job of the Reserve Bank is to keep it within a much narrower band. Now, this inflation is worldwide and it's caused for a number of factors. But here locally, when interest rates rise, as I've mentioned, mortgage rates go up. So this is going to have an impact on the housing market. And we're already seeing house prices dropping. We've currently got a really strong labour market, so unemployment's only about 3.3%. But what the Reserve Bank are potentially forecasting is a recession. And because they're saying that rates are at 4.25 at the moment, but could potentially go up to about 5.5, which may put the economy into a recession. So that's what we're sort of looking out for.
So obviously, over the next couple of years, it's going to be a really difficult time for relationships from a financial perspective. And it's going to place a lot of pressure on these relationships. What can people do to help themselves get through this difficult period?
Well, look, understandably, this is going to have an impact on relationships. If we've got the unemployment rate increasing, then potentially that's people losing their jobs, which is very stressful to all relationships. As I've already mentioned, if you're having to pay more for your mortgage, then that's going to put a pressure on your household budget. Now, the term recession does sound a bit scary, but actually, technically, it means 2 negative periods of economic growth. So the recession that we may see next year may not be that deep. It may only last for a couple of quarters, but generally what we would say is that put some savings aside. Make sure that you've got money put aside in the case that one of you may lose your job, or your household expenses are going to increase, and not just for mortgages, but we're already seeing that, supermarket shopping, petrol, everything. So have some money put aside.
So how can an investment advisor help our listeners?
Sure. So we work with people to set their long-term objectives. Now, at the moment, things seem a bit scary short-term if we're going into a recession, and certainly in my world, we know that the share market has dropped quite a bit in the last year. People's KiwiSaver balances will be impacted by that. But our job is really to get people to focus on the long term, so that the short-term pain is probably not going to affect where you want to be in 10 or 15 years' time. We work with clients to really understand their own personalised goals and objectives, and also their tolerance for risk, which can be different for different people, and then we create a portfolio that matches that.
Right. So how do you do that?
Well, in these sort of tough times, our job is really to act as a guide. We're listening here, we provide reassurance, and we try to keep people on track. We want people not to make really hasty decisions because they think the markets are not going well, like selling out everything at the bottom. We just keep a rational head and make sure that they really are focusing on that long term. Now, some people who may be 15 to 20 years away from retirement, in fact, that means that there could be opportunities. So a lot of the share prices have dropped, some good quality companies, so you can actually buy them at cheaper prices. Equally with your KiwiSaver, even though your balance may have gone down, the number of units that you can buy at the moment is more because they're cheaper. So there can be a silver lining to this.
Fantastic. So how can couples actually insulate themselves from future and further financial stress during this period of a recession?
So I sort of like to put it in a bit of a list, of 10 points. So I'll run through that with you. Firstly, just try not to panic. I know this is easier said than done, but this is where it's really important to have somebody, a trusted financial advisor that you can talk to. And as I mentioned, a lot of our clients, we have portfolios that are tailored to the amount of risk that they want to take. Secondly, I'd say just reduce your financial news intake if you're feeling a bit nervous. The media can overplay things. They're talking about this recession. We're not there yet. And it's the Reserve Bank that's sort of forecasting it. So if you are feeling anxious, then perhaps don't sort of watch the news so much and about all this financial news. Just understand that this is a normal cycle. We go through times where interest rates are cut and they're lower. We've seen that historically, and it is completely normal. But if you really are nervous, then it might be an opportunity to de-risk. But again, I would advise talking to your advisor about that. Fourthly, consider your money mindset. If you actually know this, and sometimes couples can have different money mindsets. Some might be a spender and some might be a saver. But together you should be focusing on a strategy that works for you and that you can stick to. So also take the emotions and decision making out of the equation by investing regularly. And KiwiSaver is a really good example of this, where people are putting in money with each pay, and so you can invest when it's high, invest when it's low as well. This is a really important one. I think with knowledge comes power. So educate yourself, and the fact that your listeners are on here today, that's exactly what they're doing. It's a fantastic place to start. 7, remind yourself of your objectives. If they haven't changed, your strategy probably won't change. So if your objective is to try and save money for retirement, then that's not going to change, even if we are in a recession or if markets are low. Things will recover. Take control of what you can control, and things like your budget, so how much you're spending, the amount of debt that you're taking on, the size of your emergency fund, which I talked about earlier, and your own knowledge, which is really important. Now, reframe this as an opportunity. So, as I said, we go through cycles. It could be a good chance to buy some shares that are cheaper, to put some more into your KiwiSaver. And finally, lean on an advisor. That's what we do with our clients. We're here, we are the sounding board. We want them to be able to sleep at night. So it's really good to have conversations. And certainly over this last year, where people have been a bit more nervous, and if we are moving into recession, it's really important to have that good communication with clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Well, thank you, Tanya, for joining us. I think everyone who's listening to this has really learned something today. I know I have, about the financial pressures and the effects that it can have on a relationship, whether that be a good or bad, and planning for a recession. It's very important, as we just don't know what 2023 is going to bring, do we?
That's right. Absolutely.
So how do our listeners touch base with you if they want further information or advice?
Well, as you mentioned, I'm with Craig's Investment Partners, so you can either call me directly, my 2 numbers are there, or drop me an email, and I'm really happy to start the conversation and, to give you some guidance.
Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.